Okay. All right.
What are we doing, Christian?
All right, folks. Welcome up.
Crushed
Back.
it.
All right. Get rid of that. That probably is not a good thing.
Stays forever.
No, all right. Anyways, welcome back to another episode of Into the Lion's Den with your co-hosts.
He's got nothing.
Well, Mr. Tired Boy over here.
Wow.
I didn't put a captain in front of it because this is self-induced, in my opinion.
More than likely.
JD Stevens and Christian Griffith, brought to you proudly by Pride Roofing Construction and Level Creative Studios.
No.
All right, so JD called you Mr. Tired Boy today, primarily because, well, you have some things in your personal life you probably need to correct if you're only sleeping 4 hours a night. But I would assume some of the stresses we're creating inside of the workplace are also playing a factor into why you can't shut your brain off. So today we are going to be discussing redlining. All right. So when you're at your maximal output, at maximal capacity, automotive engine, he's going to break that down a little bit more. But the negative impact of staying in that zone for too long.
Or perceived.
To
be in
right,
that zone.
Which is kind of what we're dealing with around here right now. We're in a different time of the year where, we're moving out of the slow season. Grass is green, the trees are budding, it's raining, occasional small hail, things are starting to move a little bit. And now people are thinking about their exterior building projects that are going on. And so we're getting a lot more calls. We're having a lot more interactions. A lot more things are spinning. During our winter season, we're really running at maybe 30 to 45% of what our actual capacity for business is. Now we still have to pay all those bills, so that's a burden and a stress all in itself. But, there's not as much of an obligation or as many responsibilities to tackle in a single day's time. When things start back up, which is exactly what's happening right now, if we don't have our feet firmly where they're supposed to be with a mission and a plan and a trail probably to walk on, things get a little bit chaotic. So let's talk about redlining and visualize that for the audience members. And thank you. Actually, I probably should put a shout out. We just crossed our 200th subscriber today. It sounds like
huge, yeah.
It's a big deal. Thank you for everybody who's a regular participant, regular viewer, regular listener, and those of you that are new. We appreciate you being here, and hopefully we can keep bringing you good content. But back to you, redline.
So if I'm going to put it into a visual of, I don't know, I always think of the Fast and Furious movies. I know that we talk about how I never watched any movies.
If you win by an inch or a mile.
I've been
Monica. Sorry, I love Fast and the Furious. They're so cheesy, but perfectly cheesy to be amazing movies. So I'm a fan.
Specifically, the first 3 to 4 are my favorites. When we started going to space and stuff, that was like, all right.
I thought we just wanted to.
You're doing too much.
I thought we just wanted to steal, car radios or DVD players.
Do you know what they're stealing in the first movie? It'll blow your mind. Do you remember?
I thought it was DVD players.
Combination VHS DVD players.
There you go. Yeah, that ages us, my friend. We love these movies, and they're still putting out VHS, and that was something that you want to steal. That tells you how old we are. That's exciting.
They're stealing millions of dollars of combination VHS DVD players.
And then it went to gas, and then it went to let's save the world and let's save the universe, and
gas makes sense. They're in a foreign country for that one. So they're stealing gas. That one made sense, but VHS DVD player combos.
Sorry, I totally rabbit holed us there.
Oh, 100%.
We got to give a shout out, R.I.P. Mr. Paul Walker, Vin Diesel, you're the man. Keep making awesome movies.
Absolutely. I freaking love. I've watched all of them a bunch of times.
Yeah.
Probably more than I should admit. But
well, at least you like some good movies.
I like lots of great movies. You guys just like weird movies.
I'm eclectic. I like different things. Right? So.
Absolutely. I'm going to say it a dozen times because we haven't shot in a while. I say absolutely a lot, and I get absolutely trashed about it. So I have to be very careful about it. So
Well, I follow up just about every sentence I say with right. So I mean, we've all got our issues here. So hopefully people can get past that. Right?
we
Right?
sure do.
Just kidding. All right, back in.
We're going back in. So it's when he's pushing these back to like the Fast and Furious thing. It's when he's pushing the, I'm gonna butcher it, Challenger.
He's in a Challenger.
Challenger.
In the first movie.
Yeah. I don't know why I always screw that up. But he's pushing the Challenger to its max. And it's, maybe it's not the first one, but it's like where it's the one when they're in Puerto Rico and he's like pushing that old car that's the junk car of the island to its max and it's blowing out all of the screws and
Sure.
overheating and everything. That's what Redline is, of like you're running, at the max, and eventually if you keep it pegged, you're going to have failures.
Well, when you think about, any pressure system generally has a gauge and it has a range where there's green, yellow, and red. You cross into the red zone, what that means is you have put too much pressure on said system, and therefore things can happen, whether it be combustion, whether that be blowouts, whether that be you name it. Depends on what you're pushing through there. It's not a good thing. Not a good thing to stay there for too long. Right?
No, it can result in if we bring it back to the human element of, that's where you'll see tempers come out. Even out of people that are typically very calm, sometimes they'll just get very short clipped with people around them. And specifically, if they're the manager of a team, you'll see that they start being a little bit more short with their team than they normally are. I don't care what you have to say, just do what you're told. You'll start to see a lot of that.
Which ultimately, it takes you back years when you start to fade into that particular personality, whatever you want to call it, right? You spend a lot of time building a team. You spend a lot of time understanding your team, understanding their whys, whatever the trigger point is. What is it that their goal is? And you're uniform and you're marching in step with each other. And all of a sudden you become a different person. Were you a liar the whole time? Or is this just how it is now? And if it is how it's going to be now, do I want to be here? Lose a lot of motivation.
Correct. You can lose entire teams once you get that pressure on, because all of a sudden a person who they really liked and got along with super duper well is flipped his hat around and Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. And you're just like,
You totally gave me another movie reference in my head. You ever watch Over the Top? Sylvester Stallone?
No.
Arm wrestling movie?
No.
Okay. So he's like driving a truck and he's literally using like a pulley system to, whatever. It's amazing. But there's a point in the movie where he's talking to his son and he's like, when I turn my hat backwards, I'm a machine.
Fair enough.
So I guess now we're engaged. It's different personality, but there you go. Over the Top. Amazing movie. Watch it, everybody. Write how much you love it in the comments below.
And then know that I'll never watch it. But you'll start to see that wear on the team. And then you also, we talked about this in previous episodes of your attitude affects your team. So you'll notice that all of a sudden your whole team is short.
It's like an inherited stress. Right? Even if that stress they really don't carry, what they know is that if the person that I am supposed to report to, the person whose responsibility is to help me, is this stressed out, is there more to it, right? And you start to let your mind do what it does, and generally people go to the negative with that. What's wrong with the business? What's wrong with the leadership? Was there something that I missed, right? Are we turning the page and we're doing this thing differently? Is this the culture I want to be involved with now? Because if there's something big they're not telling me about, so on and so forth, right?
Did I screw up?
Yeah.
Is the reason that he was clipped with me is because I'm perpetually screwing up, and he's just not saying anything, and I don't know that I'm doing anything wrong. So then they're going back and double, triple checking all of their work beyond what is necessary because they don't want to deal with the clip tone or any of those kind of things. And so that's a kind of a I call it a symptom more than anything else of you'll just see that symptom. But a lot of times this red line, at least from what I've noticed, we get it every year.
Mm-hmm.
We get it every year from the transition to 40% up to, we're rolling about 55%.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have not increased that much is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
But because we, it's been, the winters are a little bit easier. There's less going on. It's easy to be on top of things all the time. You get a little bit lax in your time management because you have more time to complete things. And the work will naturally expand to fill the time you give it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a quote that I heard recently of whatever work you have will expand to fill whatever time you give it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that really sucks.
It hits hard with the procrastinators and the ADHDers of the world.
It sure does.
Yeah.
And so doing things like setting
There's
timers.
maybe a good visual I can give is if you've ever been in a car that has a timing issue, that's kind of where we're at right now. We're not moving that fast. But the engine sounds like it's going to blow because it hasn't slipped into a lower gear yet. That's
Yeah, we're having misfires because we're out of time. We're out of sync with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So you're starting to see some of that misfire because people are trying to figure out how to get themselves back in the time management flow that they had that worked incredibly well last year. But also you see managers and things that have taken on new responsibilities, different things like that.
they haven't quite figured out the flow.
Correct. They haven't figured out how to make all of the pieces work. And then, this is completely excluding the home element.
Mm-hmm.
Because that plays into all of this of parents with young kids are starting to think about school's almost out. And so you have all of the external stresses that come with this. So, you potentially have someone on a hamster wheel of there's all of these things that they're now responsible for that I've kind of not had to think about. And now I'm starting to think about them again, and my job's gotten more complicated because I took on responsibility because I wanted to grow, or I want the next position, and this is part of getting to that next position. And they haven't fallen into sync yet.
Yeah.
Or, like I said, a lot of it is you've lost the flow state that you had previously of, this isn't that hard. But
Yeah, and you want the sports people out there. It's the first couple weeks really of practice are generally the hardest weeks of practice, right? Especially if you're a multiple sport athlete and you're not doing this year round. You walk back into a wrestling room after just getting out of football, your body's not ready for that. You're not ready for that. You feel slow. You feel tired. You feel like your brain and your body are not connected. Now, are some of these just in your head? Yes, they very much are, because you're not feeling the dopamine dumps of immediate success and that type of stuff. They come further and further away, or they're further to reach than. I said that really wrong, but anyways, there's a lot of analogies you can put to it, but it's your timing is off.
Yeah,
timing is off, and so, well, let's talk a little bit, JD. Maybe we don't identify or alienate any people in the office. Paint a bad picture for our viewers of somebody that is great at their job, but right now is making their job harder than it should be. But what are some of the key contributors to this red line feeling or this timing issue that we have right now? I can think of one very important one right now, which is essentially when you have more time on your hands, you have more ability to be reactive, but in a slower and more contained space. Right? So operating in a reactive way as somebody who's building a product or something like that, when you have a lot of time on your hands, still instinctually or intrinsically has time available for strategy applied to this reactive move. But when you're in a reactive state of mind and you have 3, 4, 5, 6 times as many problems to handle, you have 3, 4, 5, 6 times less time available, right? And so right now, one of the biggest contributors to our current red line or timing issue and that type of stuff is not planning proactively for what's ahead of us, right? We've had a lot of analogies we've used in the past, which, you know, we service a lot of area. Priority Roofing Construction services a really wide area, right? And we're 50 miles around Cheyenne. And that's a long way to the north, right? All the gap in between, 50 miles around our Loveland location. Sometimes we go farther than that, depending on what the offering is for the service and that type of stuff, right? If we don't have a plan of action when it's time to start building some of these things in the hopper, what is it? The ultimate result is a lot of windshield time, a lot of extra time in between places, right? If you plan your schedule where you're working in a short proximity, you can not only use less people, but you can build more efficiently while you're there, right? If we're not taking the time to strategize certain things like that, well, everybody's going to feel like they're too busy to handle a week's load of work, right? Everybody, because they are, right? You're spending wasted hours behind a wheel. You're spending wasted hours behind a computer. You're having wasted conversations with 3 or 4 different people that could have been had with one, right? It's that's one of our biggest key contributors is not thinking proactively, because, you know, it doesn't matter how many times I remind people of the ebbs and flows of things on a Monday morning meeting, but having your shit in line means having your shit in line. And that means being ready to press go when it's time to press go. And if you weren't really ready and you were just listening, or maybe just letting the words go in one ear and out the other, this is a result, right?
I think you said it in one morning meeting when someone asked a question, and it made me laugh at the time, but it's really stuck with me and I know that I'd heard it a million times in my life, but that day it was just like, yep, that's hilarious. But someone was complaining about they couldn't get through the door, they couldn't get out the door, and they had this going on, and their phone was dead, and, you know, all of these things. And you were just like, proper planning prevents piss poor performance.
Usually my response is, have you ever heard of the 6 Ps?
Yeah. I think that's how you did it, and then explained it. And it made me laugh because, you know, it was a bunch of simple questions like, well, why didn't you plug your phone in last night? And well, I didn't think about it. And it was just all of these little things.
Having some foresight.
Correct.
Right?
And this person had just not done any of it. They had got home, and, you know, we all have days like this, but he'd got home, threw everything on in his backpack, threw it on the couch and went to bed, or whatever he did. Focused on whatever else he focused on for that night, not thinking about tomorrow, of like, you know, all of this, everything that comes with tomorrow. You know, I'm one of those people that for a really long time, I struggled with finding my keys because would just set them down somewhere because I'd take them out of my pocket. I bought a container and I put it on the edge of my thing. And first thing I do when I get home is I unload everything into that container.
Things like that can be a saving grace for people like you and I. I have a lot of things going through my mind on any given day, right? I was thinking about this the other day, and I was like, why do I not have the same relationship with every employee that we have now that I did 5 years ago, right? And then I started to actually quantify what that would take, right? A 5-minute conversation with 30 people is 2.5 hours, right? And I want to do that more than once in a week. Good luck completing the rest of your tasks, right? So then there's so many things going on. Something as simple as buying a nice little porcelain thing that sits on a counter, and that's where your keys go, can save you an incredible amount of time, right?
It saved me a ton of time over the course of a year. And, you know, these are the little things. Creating systems for yourself and getting back into this flow can help break the red line filling. One of the biggest contributors to that is, and I'm speaking for myself right here when I say this, turn the freaking TV off. Turn the Xbox off, the PlayStation, whatever it is that you do. For me, for a while, I listen to audiobooks. And I'd just be sitting on my couch listening to an audiobook, and it's 3 a.m. Because it's something I enjoy. that messes with your whole day.
Mm-hmm.
It's just one of those things of like, get more sleep.
Mm-hmm.
I know that that's part of the reason that I feel the way I do and why I've been short.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
I've been short. I felt behind. I don't feel like I can get on top of things. Well, it's because you're tired.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Truthfully and honestly, a lot of things, when you feel like you're way behind and stuff like that, you're probably tired.
A lot of it's self-induced. Well, and that leads me to the other point that I wanted to make. So one of the pieces that got us here was living in a reactive mindset instead of future planning, right?
Mhm.
But involved with that, if you want to be good at planning out your life, to be strategic, to be efficient, to be good at whatever it is that you're doing, you have to create boundaries within your schedule, and you have to stick to them. That requires discipline, right? It requires discipline to force yourself to shut the TV off when you're supposed to shut the TV off. It requires discipline when you're communicating with other people who want to cross that boundary, right? You know, that's the rule of thumb, I guess, in the rehab world, is if you have not defined your boundaries, you will be incapable of rehab. You will be incapable, right? Because you have to know what you can and can't do. You need to know where the line is and how not to cross it. And when somebody wants you to cross it or is going to help you cross it in some way, you have to put that in its place because you have a defined boundary and you're disciplined in what that boundary is. So proper scheduling requires a little bit of discipline and boundary setting, right? I have a sneaking suspicion that if I looked into, the written schedules of everybody that's currently in this mindset of the redlining or whatever, I would assume there's probably nothing planned in there, or if there is, it's very minimal, right? If you, all of a sudden your workload goes from 30% of what it was last year to 55%, then instantaneously a storm hits, it's 100%, right? You have to be able to set a schedule in front of yourself that you're going to stick to and allow people that you have to interact with to know what that schedule is. Right? If you have office hours assigned these are the office hours that work for me right now for me to work on what you need, then these are my office hours or things for that I need, closed door type of things, right? And this is my field time. This is my time to do these documents, blah, 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 blah. And you stick to that, well, you're going to be able to fill the time you have with the task that you need, right?
Well, and this is one that I've heard a whole bunch recently is we kind of have two ends of the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
We have somebody who's really great at this, of like, not right now.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, not right now.
Mm-hmm.
Run along.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he doesn't say that, but
Shoot it out.
he's very good about being like, I'm sorry, no, not right now.
Mm-hmm.
But then I heard the phrase of, well, my position requires constant interruption.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, yeah, I get the interruptions hard, but like, that's all my day is.
Mm-hmm.
And
Sorry.
hearing it was kind of like, well, that's probably why it feels like you're a red line,
Uh-huh.
because you haven't, set that boundary with your team of, yes, new team members need more help
Mm-hmm.
and need more focus and things like that. And that's specifically what this member of the team is doing.
Yeah.
And all those kind of things. And then I'm interrupted a bunch.
Yep.
Part of my position here. And I was incredibly bad about saying no.
Mm-hmm.
Of, I don't have time. Not right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that I've started doing.
So let's talk about, before you go too far into this thought, let's talk about that with the viewers. So when you don't have time, right? Somebody wants to disrupt your mojo. You have something that's of priority. Maybe instinctively this priority is higher than the priority of the person that's coming in. You want to be like, no, not right now, right? But that can be received and not amazing by all people, right? Some people are like, man, this guy's a dick. I can never rely on him, and then they stop going to him, even though that's the expert or whatever, right? What's a good delivery mechanism for that? It would be sticking firmly to the boundaries you've set for yourself and your disciplined schedule and say, I don't have time for that right this second. But when 1 o'clock rolls around, I will have an open door, and you can come in at any point during that 1 to 2 hour time, or 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock, and we'll tackle this then. That's a great delivery, because it's like when we talk about telling clients, I don't know. That's not a negative thing to tell somebody I don't know. That's transparent. That's honest, right? That's genuine. But following up with, I will find that answer and I'll bring it back to you. That's what they want to hear. They want to know that you're willing to go to bat and work for them, to work for this account, find this thing out, and become better together. Same thing can be done with your employees.
Yes, and that's where I'm not going to say new manager, but I'm going to say new manager, or like managers moving back into productive season, even not necessarily just new managers, where they've had time for the interruptions, so they've kind of shot themselves in the foot because they've bred it in, because they weren't following their time management schedule that they had because, well, I have less going on. So I had more time to focus on you. So having that honest conversation with your team of, hey, I was available all the time for you all winter long. And for the last couple of months, I had a lot of availability. I am very busy right now. I have posted open hours. I want to help you with your questions. I want to be involved. I need to be involved at these times because I've scheduled that time for you. So please take advantage of it because I know your questions are important and need to be answered and need to be answered timely.
Let's put it in a different perspective. The manager is like the professor. He has students. When I was in college, office hours were posted on every single professor's door. And it was required in this college. I'm sure maybe it's different everywhere else. Maybe it's online. Maybe there's portal. Maybe whatever, right? But it was on every person's door, and it was always maintained. And that's when you could go there. So I would write those things down, and I would know when I could communicate with my professors. I never expected to be able to walk into a lecture that I'm not involved with and say, hey, professor, come here. Take care of this thing for me right now because I have this question and I need it answered. I'm the subordinate. I'm the learner, right? And so, yes, this conversation we need to have, we need to look at it through their eyes too, and we need to embed those thought processes into them. There is a bigger picture here. You're one cog in the mechanism right now. Maybe you'll serve as a bigger cog and a bigger driver as you progress and move forward, and I know you're excited to do that, but that is a marathon type of approach. We're not sprinting in this category. I need to tackle these things right now because for the company as a whole needs this done, and then I need to help you with that. Both are valuable and important, but that one needs to fit in this time period, whereas right now I'm going to finish this lecture and I'm going to teach these students. Right.
And that's what I've been seeing the most of. That's what has contributed the most to what we're talking about of this red line is everybody has allowed themselves to be so perpetually available that now that we need to start prioritizing tasks again of there's things that I have to do to operate and I need to do them timely and effectively because it is what it is. But we're still trying to be perpetually available. And it's like there's a middle ground. We can have a happy medium of I am available. Here's when I'm available. I'm not available during these other times. Don't call me 3 or 4 times or knock on my door 3 or 4 times. If I closed my door, it's probably closed for a reason.
Sure, and organizations can do smart things. Like we have taught our guys, what the trickle system is for information, right? It's like, okay, so this person's your direct, this is the person that you need the information from. But if you need something that's time sensitive and they can't meet that time sensitive time frame, whatever, then the next person in line is the person that you go to, right? Calling somebody 4 times in a row doesn't make me think this is a fire. It makes me think you're an asshole.
It boils my blood. It's one of my biggest pet peeves in the world.
Because it's very clear that you feel as though your time and what you're doing is more important than what my life and what I'm doing is. Maybe it is at that point in time. But let's try to do this in a more professional manner. If I don't answer, right, and you know why I haven't answered, go to my next in line, right? And if they call me 2 times after I just got your call 1 time, okay, this is probably a real fire and this is something I could address. Let me excuse myself. I'll tackle it.
Mhm.
Does that make sense? Yeah. So,
It does make sense. And then the other thing is what we were talking about at the first is planning with intention.
mhm,
So not being reactive, being proactive.
mhm,
And I had a really good conversation about this of had to reschedule product because we got weather
mhm,
or install because we got weather.
mhm,
Reached out to that homeowner or whatever it is, reached out to your client and said, I have this date available.
mhm,
The homeowner was totally fine. Well, actually, they had a scheduling conflict
mhm,
and proposed a different date.
mhm,
And we're like, perfect, we can make that work.
mhm,
And was transparent with the homeowner, and we did that. But it was, I already had these 3 days scheduled out.
mhm,
So I asked if he could take the day after the other 3 days that I had scheduled
mhm,
because we had weather come in.
mhm,
And so I only ended up having to reschedule him.
mhm.
Whereas if I had done it reactively, I'd have put him here in the first time slot available, even though it's not available.
And the effect is compounded by 4.
And then it's compounded by 4.
Mhm.
And so planning smart and
Yeah,
not being
and-
reactive of like,
Being effective communicators. Now that's something I see from a lot of our guys regularly too, where they're like, now I get the reason, right? I understand that it's good intention when we're like, let's try to force this through to meet this requirement and whatever else, right? But every client from this point forward, if you blow up your engine in the midst of putting too much pressure into it, everyone's affected, right? So if you have just a very simple conversation, hey, we ran into this problem. The dump trailer popped a tire. We need to get that replaced. We have 3 people that are lined up right after you. I can move them around, but that's going to affect the schedule. Can we place you on Tuesday next week instead of today? And if that's a very simple, that's very transparent. People understand that things happen, right? And that's relevant to our industry. I mean, maybe all of you guys aren't pulling around, $40,000, 40,000 pound dump trailers and stuff like that. But at the same time, it's like, it's not 40,000 pounds. I can't remember. 18,000 pounds.
it's not quite that much.
But
Big
regardless,
trailer anyway.
Regardless, big trailer, heavy stuff, tire blow, bam. Let's get back to it, right? But anyways, it's like effective communication is very simple. That's what your average client wants. They want transparency. They want information as fast as possible so that they can actually apply to their strict and defined and disciplined schedule what this is going to do for them. If it fits in, great. If they want to force it, if there's a way for us to force it, then at least we know that this is how this is going to go from this point forward. But we've tried the attempt of let's manage the chaos the smart way by implementing strategy and having a very clear and honest conversation about why we're in this position. Is that a scary conversation to have? No,
It shouldn't be.
right? Maybe it's scary for the client who took the day off to be there to watch the job. That's a different story altogether because they're accumulating or they're taking away from their PTO or whatever it is. Maybe they boarded their dog and there's more to it and so on and so forth. But if you don't ask, the
You
answer is
don't
always
know.
no,
Yeah.
right? And so there's no reason to blow up your engine for the sake of one thing when most people are pretty reasonable. 95% of the time they're like, oh, I understand. Tuesday will work, right? And instead of this chaos and confusion that erupts inside of the office, we jumped ahead of it, had a not difficult conversation, an honest conversation, and we didn't have to have any of the heads come together and bash into each other.
No,
Right.
because it was handled in a way that made sense.
Yeah.
I'm going to at least ask the question.
Yeah.
Hey, that doesn't. And then the worst he could have gotten is like, that doesn't work for me. I really need it done this week for X, Y, or Z reason.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have to make a couple of phone calls. I believe that I can have that happen for you. I'm just going to have to move a couple things around. Let me call you back.
Mhm.
Is there a day that this has to happen?
Mhm.
Yes, this day. Okay, I will try to make that work.
Mhm.
And then you make the other ones. But then you're potentially, by asking something as simple as, is there a day that will work best for you?
Mhm.
And they say Thursday. Now I don't have to call everybody on Tuesday and Wednesday. I just have to call my people on Thursday and find out.
Mhm. Right. You can play some strategy here. You're a puzzler. Right?
It's one of those things of like, just having honest conversations of like, we can't control the weather, and we live in Colorado and it's spring.
Right.
It's gonna rain. It's gonna snow.
Things
it's gonna
happen, right?
So don't add to your red line, is what I'm saying.
We've talked pretty in depth on what got us perceivably into this position. Now, are we really truly redlining? No. No. But what we are doing is we're getting stressed out about inefficiencies that we've allowed ourselves to get accustomed to because of slow seasons, right? So the very first thing that I believe that any organization should do if they find themselves in this position where it's like it feels like everybody's stressed to the brim, but we're really not even moving at the pace we should be moving, right? What I think that should be done is let's do a quick evaluation on duplicated efforts. That is the very first place that you can draw back some of these responsibilities, stresses, and whatnot, right? If you really analyze certain circumstances, we're incredibly guilty of this here. There's a lot of community decision making, and let's talk about it 14 times before we make it, right? But there's always somebody who's really actually the decision maker for every one of those things, regardless of what level it is. There's always somebody that this is their monkey, right? So let's evaluate who it is that needs to make this decision, right? And then let's cut every one of the other people that is seemingly playing a factor or doing the same thing that they are and having the same conversations with 12 or 13 other people, right? Let's cut those first, and let's get to the grassroots with that one person. And then if we took that even farther and we asked this person to do a true self-evaluation about how they're scheduling themselves and how, like, are they disciplined? Are there boundaries within their schedule? Are they actually thinking forward? The answer is probably no, right? And let's put some time into that. Everything will work its way into this once you've freed up all that time with those other people and this person has an established guideline of how I'm going to do this job to achieve maximal efficiency. Pretty simple.
And don't duplicate your own effort. That's another thing I see a lot of I have a task that I'm doing, but that task always comes back around of, wherever it is. Sometimes there's some tasks that you do at 2 different times because it's 2 different checkpoints. And you've already done the first checkpoint. So don't redo the work you did at the first checkpoint. Do you not trust your own work? Because if you trust your own work and you said, this is good, I'm moving it forward, why do we need to do your checkpoint again when it comes back to you?
Yep. Well, and that leads to, we haven't really brought this up in it, but this is a key contributor to why we currently we're running very fast on treadmills, but not moving very far forward, right? And a lot of that has to do with people, for some reason, reverting back to not necessarily trusting the process, right? The way we run this organization is very linear and very streamlined. There are milestones within every project that things have to hit, and those things have automated triggers to allow the next person that needs to assist in every one of these areas to do their job, right? It's all, if this was 20 years ago, I'd be talking gibberish, but everybody should pretty much understand CRM softwares and automations and statuses and those types of things. That's the way we run the business, and if everybody sticks to that script and trusts the people before them
And themselves
and the people after them, then everything works fine. But a lot of the time, I think, because a new season always kind of feels like there's some newness to it, and people start to get a little bit, maybe they question some of the efficacy that they have and they had from the past. Maybe they have some experience that are kind of traumatic for them, that they were hard situations to get for it. So they're a little more caution. They're dipping toes in the water instead of jumping into the water, or whatever it is, right? But ultimately, if you have a linear system the way that we do, and everybody has their task, that's the thing that they own within that, you have to trust the people before you that they did the job that they need to, and you're going to have to trust the people after you that they're going to do the job. If you can't get that part done, then what you're going to do is review all of these things and then overwatch all of these things, thus duplicating every one of those efforts of everybody else and wasting all of your time. Right, and I understand that that's a difficult feat for a lot of people. That was a difficult feat for me to do, as if I'm coming from an owner's perspective. Hiring people, there's a lot of pros and cons to hiring people. Right, no longer do you have the control of I can do this one way and I'm really good at it. and I'm gonna have to trust this next person, right? But it's costly, so you got to make sure that it produces, and there's a lot of reasons. But if you can't get to the point where you trust the people before you, the people after you, that they were elected on purpose, they were trained well, and you don't trust that process anymore, just expect to be doing 10 times the amount of work that you should be doing in your job, and purposely, redlining yourself, right? So, I guess there's like an analogy in the back of my head that I can't put the words into place just yet. So I'll let you talk, and maybe they'll come back to me.
I'm just continuing on with what you're saying.
I remember. Well, it's not an analogy, but it's something that one of my mentors, I mentioned it on this podcast a number of times, but one of my mentors said to me that was truly trajectory changing in terms of my very first management job that I ever had. And it was Nolan, and he said, and I was having a really hard time making a decision with some employees. And he said, Christian, are you a heart surgeon? And I was like, dude, Nolan, that's a stupid ass question. I'm not a heart surgeon. He goes, okay. So if you make a mistake, is anybody's heart going to blow up? Are they ultimately going to die from this mistake, is what he's getting at. I said, no. And he goes, then make a judgment call. And if it's the wrong one, don't make that judgment call the next time. Go with option B the next time and move on. And that's what I think a lot of our guys are failing to do. They're not trusting the process, right? They're not trusting the other people. They're not trusting their own judgment because they think that the whole ship's going to just sink to the bottom of the ocean because they made one small error. When really, you can get past errors. Mm-hmm. But when you have lengthy time in between each one of these because of lack of decision making, right, you'll eventually get past it. But it's going to be the worst account ever. You're going to lose a lot of reputation with that person. You're going to lose a lot of esteem with the people around you. You're going to seem incompetent. You're going to seem less incompetent by making a quick bad decision than a long bad decision. Right?
And that's what you're talking about specifically of like just make a call. Mm-hmm. So our process built the way it is go step by step. Mm-hmm. At this step, just do your part. Mm-hmm. Well, what if this was missed? Or what if this is, and then it was missed?
And it was missed. And we can take that information and fix it in a group setting or with the group, right? We can target
the person that caused the error.
We can target that later.
But if you go in and try to fix it and change and all these things and then tell us about it, mm-hmm. do I know that was actually there?
Yeah. Well, and this person, and maybe there's a lot of these guys that are guilty of this where they'll go in and change a bunch of errors for other people, think they're doing a good job. But what they fail to do is take that learning lesson to the person who mm-hmm. made the error. Right? So they're condoning incompetence. They're doing extra work, simultaneously wasting their own time, stressing themselves out, and not allowing their team members to grow in their position.
And carrying resentment.
Mm-hmm. Lots.
They always do this wrong. Mm-hmm. Have you told them? Well, no, I always fix it. You're the problem.
I bet you they wouldn't do it wrong if you taught them how to do it right.
If this is always wrong and you always fix it, you're the problem. Because they may not know.
Yeah.
So don't fix it. Mm-hmm. Teach the person how to do it properly.
Yeah.
If it's something minor, yeah, fix it. Mm-hmm. But if it's a thing that you see over and over again, that's when it's like, okay, I need to teach them this. Mm-hmm. People make mistakes. Every once in a while, they're going to miss something during, it's part of your job to review it. You're going to be like, oh, and it's, a number flip or, something silly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just fix it. But if you see that it happens every time they do it, that's not a mistake. It's potentially, it is a mistake or it's poor. They got it confused in their mind. They have done it this way the whole time, didn't realize it was wrong.
Maybe they were instructed the wrong way from the get-go and they think this is right. They don't even know it's wrong, right?
Correct.
Well, we've gotten to a lot of good takeaways. So how we got here, takeaways. We've talked about rigorous and strategic scheduling, discipline in the schedule, boundary setting, and analyzing duplicated efforts. We talked about a lot of those things. I think one other one that I'd like to point out and plug in there that's a very useful tool. Now, I know everybody's all over Instagram. That's probably how you saw us, and a lot of people follow these corporate jokes and these funny things that, you know, people who work in a corporate office understand. You know, but the one that I'm thinking of the most is when people are like, that face I give when I walked out of a 45-minute meeting that could have been an email. You know what I mean? It's not always a good idea to jump to, let's get everybody together and put together a meeting. But when you have this sense of like impending doom and stress and just absolute pressure that everybody's putting on themselves, that's a good time to press time out. Let's take everybody in and let's have a discussion about why we all feel that this is too much. Because I know we're capable of more. We did it last year. Right? And the year before. And the year before that. And the year before that. Right?
6 months ago. Not even a year, 6 months ago.
So I know we're capable. So let's get us in the room and let's talk about it. What is it that's getting us into this place? And maybe we haven't deduced what it was in this conversation, but perception, like people carry around perceptions that are very inaccurate all the time. But unfortunately, the perception of the employee or the perception of the client is the reality of the organization. That's how it's going to be treated. That's how it's going to be managed and judged, right? That's just the way it is. Right? So maybe there's a perspective that they have that you're not even understanding, and this is it could have been triggered from a very simple conversation that was taken the wrong way. It could have been something very, very small that turned into something very, very big. That was that snowball effect video that we put out, right? But you're not going to know unless you get everybody and you start to vent out some of this excess pressure and then find them out. Maybe you blood wall it. You talk about the quantitative value of what we're losing by continuing this way. Maybe you just write down each of those hinge points and you identify who it is that actually needs to tackle this thing so it's not 12 people, so on and so forth. But a group setting for this type of scenario is probably a good idea. Right.
It can be very helpful, and, you know, that meme exists for a reason.
Yeah.
There's definitely a lot of frivolous meetings that happen, which only adds to exactly what we're talking about. So, you know, take meetings with a grain of salt. Training emails are great, especially if you ask people to respond, because then you'll know very clearly if they made it to the bottom. But also, don't just put it right as the last thing. Put it like one paragraph above the bottom.
Yeah. We like to do that regularly where we'll embed like please confirm receipt of this email, but plug it in somewhere in the middle so we can gauge who's actually reading company announcements.
And how far they're reading and things like that. But it's
pretty useful little exercise because you find out who's probably going to be your troublemaker in the group. So,
or who's going to miss something very important.
I don't mean troublemaker as in they're going around, you know, lighting things on fire. I mean like they're going to be a problem because they're clearly not getting the instruction.
So there's a lot of ways that you can prevent burnout by not adding to the burnout.
Yeah.
Like, just keep your fingers to the pulse on this.
Yeah.
The red line thing is very real, especially when you come out of a slow season. So be aware of it for your team.
And it'll be the same way in a peak season. Everybody's got a peak season, right? Retail has peak season. And the week before Christmas is pretty much chaos, right?
Awful.
Right?
Every time.
Everybody has a reason, and you have to plan, and you have to understand, and then you have to trust the process, right? The organization, like I'll toot our horn, our organization wouldn't be in its 7th year if we were just figuring shit out still. No. We have figured a lot out. Now, am I saying it's perfect? No. Am I saying that everybody is in the perfect seat on the bus for an absolute efficient machine? Probably not, right? But you can trust a 7-year tenure in the business you're in, the 40-year tenure, or whatever else, right? You can trust that because there's the proof is in the pudding. If they went out of business, well, they probably weren't figuring these things out, at least at the right capacity. So trust the process, get in tune with your schedule, do a little self-analysis, and let's be honest with ourselves, right? If the reason we feel this way is because we are not preparing ourselves for a day burdened with responsibilities the day before by eating shitty food, staying up all night, going out drinking, whatever the case may be, maybe we should tone it down and maybe we figure out what our X factors are or our Y factor. And if it's not in line with what we want for the vision of our life, let's cut it out. Let's excise it. Let's get better every single day. Right?
Plug your cell phone in outside of your office or outside of your cubicle. Leave it somewhere out of your reach if you don't
I've had to do that. I've had personnel that I've had, like when I worked in the gyms, they were fantastic employees until the cell phone was out of their pocket. So they were not allowed to have cell phones on the floor. They were locked, and I controlled their combination. It was my lock that I put on. I had to do that with some people. I cared about them enough that I wanted to see them become a better professional, and they were going to get in their own way. So whatever it is, tailor fit it to your team. Understand what it is that's causing them to get there. And let's just get to work. Let's get to work. So
It's always more fun when we're busy anyway.
hell yeah, it is. Hell yeah, it is. I mean, it's a good burden to have. It's a good problem to have. When you're busy, it's a hell of a lot better than being so slow that you're stressed out about, are you going to be able to survive? That's a different story.
Yeah, that's a completely scary feeling to be in. So
Yeah.
I would rather have the opposite end of it of, hey, we need more hands.
Yeah.
Even though, as I've said it a dozen times, I hate hiring people. But
Yeah, JD gets to watch how much it costs for every day to run the business. So yeah, adding more to that, it's not that much fun.
that's not even the part I hate. It's all the legal forms that the government requires.
Yeah, onboarding and
I
such.
love the people. If I could just bring people in and have them sign something simple of like, hey, here's when we're going to pay you. Here's how you're going to get paid. And this is what's expected.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be great. But you got to have 30 legal forms and 10 things for the government, it feels like. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's a whole other tangent. Thanks for watching, guys.
All right. So with that, let's close it off. As JD said, thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in to Into the Lion's Den. Please like and subscribe, engage in our content. If you have any questions, place them in the comments below, and we'd love to tailor fit the next episode to you. Catch you on the flip side.
Have a good one.
Thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Into the Lion's Den. We appreciate your time, and we hope that you've gathered enough ammunition to go out, fight the good fight, and become a better person every single day. Please like and subscribe, engage in our content, ask us some questions. We'd love to tailor fit the next episode to you.